I'll let you know whenever it goes green and it tells us, okay, it looks like we're streaming here. And what I'll do is open up the chat. Welcome, everybody, to episode 70 of the Lost and Found Bin. If you could let us know. If you could let us know that we're live. The live chat is open. Dylan says hi. Perfect. So we know we at least have a connection for now, chick. So, all right. What I have on the screen seems kind of mainstream, and it's something that everyone knows about, and it's not really that big a deal in terms of everybody knows this chick. It's from the New York Times. Diplomats in Cuba suffered brain injuries. Experts still don't know why. So, there's a lot of people, and we're all going to tie this together to ME and all those other things. Good. We sound good. Everybody's saying we sound good. Excellent. Thanks, folks. I'm tuned into this live chat like a laser because of the issues that we're having with connections. So, Eileen is even saying, chick, that our notifications are back on. Call 40, we're going to call you out to say thank you for some of this information. So, chick, so we all knew about that kind of information, and we all know about the kind of EMF and ELF technology that's out there, and everyone, this isn't like new news for this kind of crowd that we have here, that they are messing around with the electromagnetic frequency. They're messing around with the anything EMF or ELF within that particular spectrum they're messing around with, right, chick? I mean, we all know this, right? This isn't news for anybody.
No, it wasn't, but it was amazing to see the mainstream media publish stories about it because for years and years, like targeted individuals and people were saying, this technology exists, it's being used on me, I know it's real, and nobody believed them. And people said, oh no, you're just, whatever. Why would they use it on you? You're not important. People would just not believe them. And then all of a sudden, the mainstream media comes out and says, there is wild technology, sound technology, and other technology that can be used to cause harm to people.
Yeah, and the thing about it took diplomats, but whatever. I don't care what level of society in terms of importance it took. At least now the information is out there, and it's absolutely mainstream, and that's all that really matters. And really, what this is about too is it's really about the level. And I'm about to uncover something here, this thing called the United States Space Force. It's a tweet where they say, from a real CIA doc about the mind's power to create reality and even jump to other dimensions, look up analysis and assessment of the gateway process. And they use the consciousness energy grid from one of the pages. And I'm throwing up that tweet there to say, one, it's great that they're finding it. And this is it's not an official account, but that doesn't matter. The point is that those of us in this channel, we are so far above and beyond the vanguard that, other Twitter centers, other centers of alternative investigation are getting to places that we've been at for 6+ months, maybe, 7, 8 months at this point. And that's fine. And that's fine. But what happens is, we oftentimes, like Chick, myself, Buster, and everybody else who's close, we know that there's so much more out there that we don't really discuss it as often because we know that if you go too far out, then people just aren't going to get it. So at least now, Chick, I feel as if now that this tweet is out there and it got 769 likes and 442 retweets from an account that has like 25K subs, at least the technology that we've been talking about for a very long time is starting to get more publicity from the broader public. Now, how I'm tying all this back in together is here from the Daily Mail. Now, this is very interesting to all of this. And we're even going to tie this all into the Mandela Effect in a second. So if you scroll down here, it's talking about, and this is all in the description for everybody, U.S. government accidentally sends a strange conspiracy theory file. That's what they call it. Describing remote mind control and forced memory blanking. The find was made by a reporter investigating left and right-wing militia groups. So let's get down to the good stuff. And it says here, and here is the good stuff. Forced memory blanking and induced erroneous actions. Reading and broadcasting thoughts, controlled dreams, forced awakening visions, microwave heating, transparent eyelids, artificial tinnitus. Sounds familiar, folks? Sudden, violent itching inside eyelids, which I've never had that, induce changes to hearing, both apparent direction and volume, and sometimes even content. And that's the voice's skull or whatever. Wildly racing heart without a cause, remotely induced violent no rash itching, forced muscular quaking, forced. Some of this is kind of not rated G. So the point is, it doesn't matter. It doesn't. Ooh, I'm gonna scroll up from that. The point is that, and you can look on this on your own. It's a mainstream article. This isn't isn't a fringe article. The point, Chick, is that it's out there. Um, it's real in terms of what people are reporting, at least in terms of what happened in Cuba. And we know that they're messing around with the electromagnetic spectrum. We know that they're messing around with ELF waves and things like that. And now it's all out there. So, where do we go from here?
It's, I mean, I love that it's being mainstreamed because at least then people can't just say, oh, anyone that talks about this is crazy, because all people have been met with is just that wall of dismissal. Now that it's
Mm-hmm.
like mainstream broadcasted, like, yes, this is absolutely happening and it can cause harm to people. And even I've seen some of the patents on televisions and things having negative effects, or being able to produce negative effects on the human as well through similar technologies. So it leads me to believe that these things are being used. And I don't want to be too controversial here, but something that I noticed years ago was basically like one of my loved ones had quite a big living room and would watch the television with the light off. And I would look at the wall, like behind him, and I could see the flicker rate of the television.
Mm-hmm.
And when Fox News and the conservative channels were on, the flicker rate was higher, even though it looked like it wasn't blinking at all. And when he would turn on like MSNBC or like CNN or one of the others, the flicker rate was lower. And that made me think that there's some influencing here. Either that attracts people, or it perhaps has an influence on how people react and respond to different things.
Mm-hmm.
And that was way back when. That was like way before the election. I don't know if that was like 2013, 2014. I was like, something is very off, because when you look at the screen, it doesn't look like it's blinking at all. When you look at the wall, it has a clear blink pattern on it. And that's not even going into, the low electromagnetic frequencies, or whatever frequencies could be broadcast. They're outside of the usual human range of perception, but can still have a big effect on the body. Because as we've seen experiments with how, like the rice experiment, and also experiments with snowflakes, like about how
Mm-hmm.
when you play different, different frequencies into water, it creates different snowflakes. Well, you're essentially a bag of water. So when different frequencies are played into you, it can change you dramatically, just as if you are a jar of rice in the rice experiment, which is kind of ties pretty much into the Mandela effect and like perception technology. Like the rice experiment is, you have like three different, sealed jars of rice, and you project hate on one, you project love on another, and you project just ignoring the third one. And people are actually getting results from this, where the one you project hate on goes rotten, and the one you project love on, like, is the same, and you have to keep them in the same conditions and everything. Years ago, I don't think I would have believed it. In today's circumstances, I absolutely believe it. And I think these things are very much understood by perhaps sources and forces that also understand some of these UFO technology and Mandela effect, things that are happening with us. Perhaps the tinnitus is to do with shifts, but perhaps it's also to do with whatever strange frequency technologies are going on, which may also tie in with our Wi Fi signals. The push for 5G, even though nobody wants it. Like, I saw a post on Twitter from Verizon, we're bringing 5G everywhere. And all of the comments were negative. They're like, we don't want it. We don't want it. We don't want it. And the person was answering and just ignoring people and saying, like, oh, can I help you with your connectivity? Is that a problem? And people were like, I don't want you to bring this until it's completely tested and I know it's safe for my children. And they're like, yeah, yeah, well, we're going to have it up and running soon. So you're going to have your 5G. It's going to be great. It's like they're not even they have a deaf ear towards what people want.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, and that's brilliant. All of that was just brilliant. And Call for Zero is what really is it brought this up early. And thanks Call for Zero on Twitter that brought this up. And I think it's really an interesting thing because as people, as our group starts to understand that consciousness and matter are basically the same thing, when someone says, "Oh, they're running," some kind of psyop on you, or they're running some kind of, you know, like it's saying here in this New York Times article, that they're running some kind of, um, you know, uh, ELF. Anything in the electromagnetic spectrum, really ultimately, when it gets down to consciousness, what you really are doing is you're altering the person's consciousness or the group of people's consciousness, which is just as important as altering reality itself. So, what Call for Zero was talking about is during some of these more radical Schumann spikes that we had. Now, we've been having those Schumann spikes lately, and people have been talking about it. But we've had some, particularly about 2 weeks ago, we had that incredibly radical spike, and right after that, we had some more Mandela effects happen, including the now infamous Randy Jackson. That's going to be a no for me, dog. And and we had a couple others like Dick Van Dyke and other people arguing whether or not someone was dead or not. And it was, the usual run that we had from years ago. And I don't think all of us, or I don't even if the Schumann bot was up to trace that, what it was like in 2016 or 2008 when they turned on these exotic technologies that are out there. But he brought up the idea of other technologies that deal in harp and all those other kinds of things. Could they be related to the Schumann spike? And could all of this still be related to the Mandela effect in terms of the kind of the wonkiness of the spiking, and then immediately after the spiking happens, we suddenly see sort of that ripple in the pond that I like to talk about of a Mandela effect. So you have the rock go in, we have the spike go, and then we have the ripple of the Mandela effect afterwards. We don't know if it's an exotic technology. We keep our staple as CERN, and that seems to be the staple for most of the ME community, but it could be some other kind of more exotic technology like what they're talking about in this article here, and we just don't know it. And I also want to, for me personally, if it's running stuff on your mind, and your mind is the basis from which reality exists anyway, then for me that is absolutely just as important as the gateway process. That's just as important as changing reality, because if reality is matter and matter is consciousness, then if you're changing the consciousness, you're really changing reality because all it is a form of perception then. So is that making any sense whatsoever, or am I just blathering on about this?
No, I think that's making total sense. Like to me, anyway, I think that these things are having an effect on the general population. And you and I have spoken before about the strange the strangeness of the natural phenomenon of immunity, and how some people can be immune to things, like inexplicably immune. And I told you before about a friend I had who, you know, unfortunately he contracted something very serious
Mm-hmm.
back in the 80s. He contracted HIV/AIDS, and all of his friends died from it,
Mm-hmm.
and he didn't. And his numbers started to go back to being almost normal. Like at first, in the first 6 months, he was not doing well and everything, and then he just like recovered. And the CDC took a special interest in him and assigned him a special doctor, Dr. Zuchek, to watch his numbers and figure out what was going on with him. And it was like, and this guy lived another 30 something years after everyone else in his circle had died.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like just, you know getting older and stressed, and like the kind of lifestyle he was living, that basically I think in the end caused problems. And it could have even been side effects from the absolute horse levels of like medication they were giving him. And I mean, like, probably the level of medication you would give a horse and not a man. They were prescribing him all kinds of everything just to see what would happen. But I was just like, this is like living proof to me that some people can literally just be immune from things that kill everyone else. And how I'm tying that in with the Mandela effect and with consciousness. And if there is a serious, deliberate effort to change reality through changing perception, because here in the Orion arm, reality is made up of light. And just as you said there, the perception basically is having a massive effect on reality. The consensus reality is kind of holding itself together through consensus. And if you can get in there and be a middleman in that situation, then if you can change what people perceive, you can actually change the outcome of what's going on in the world. So there are some people, I believe, that no matter what we're blasted with, we're immune, and the other people are not immune. And I'm not really sure what the factor is, because we're not related. We're from all different parts of the world. We're all different kinds of people, but there's something about us that this technology is not really affecting us in the same way, or perhaps we shift out before it gets really, really bad. Because I think the general population are already feeling the effects of being blasted with different types of technologies, and there's a reason why they want to push to have Wi-Fi everywhere in the world.
Yeah, that's yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and I just so also like Mazeroth Speaks was talking about the changing of musical frequencies from 432 to 440 hertz, and everyone, a lot of people that are musicians know exactly about that, and it goes back to sort of that I like that idea of us being water bags because we are mostly made of liquid, and if you take just a really quick YouTube search and you can see the difference if you do water and cymatics or sand and cymatics, you can immediately see just how different frequencies affect the body. And really what you want to get is different kinds of natural fields, like a 432 gets you versus a 440, and a 432 of all things will get you things like a hexagram and all those things. And the importance of things like sacred geometry, and why sacred geometry is so important, is not only is it important in financial areas and things like that, what you really want and what makes sacred geometry so important is that it's self-replicating. Much like, sort of the human species, we can replicate ourselves, well, as long as there's two of us. But the point being, well, actually, even that's getting away, but we're not going to talk about that technology on this show. But generally speaking, human beings are able to self-replicate and as a species. And if you get to some of the sacred geometries like a hexagram, if you don't draw a hexagram, you can draw a hexagram within a hexagram, then a hexagram within a hexagram, and a hex. And the point being is that you have these certain natural patterns and waves that will go through a human being that resonates with the human being inside. Basically our what we're made of is water mostly, and if that's in harmony with the frequency that's going through the human being will be basically, the wind will be to their back rather than the wind facing them, if I can throw on metaphor after metaphor after metaphor. But anyway, the point is there's so much in there with that. And when you take things like the 5G, you take things like the Wi-Fi, you take things like microwave, you go over and over again with all of these things, it's no wonder. It's no wonder you have all of these things that are accounting for a, we're almost getting to a precipice. And and because of that, I don't want to push it too far, but we are talking about a document on the Patreon page about this kind of precipice and what it could potentially lead to. And it's definitely something that I think is, and I've always said it, I think that it's intentional. And sometimes you got to wonder with these kinds of technologies that are out there that can be traced back to different things that are almost, they're almost blatantly occult. And it's almost as if, like I talk about, the technology is just that facade, just like everyone is looking at that computer screen right now, and the computer screen is really only a scrying mirror. So I don't know, chick.
And interestingly enough, like in our case, like the affected's case particularly, the screen, as you say, like the mirror here, it's a way that we can even contact each other when we don't see the same world map. There's a lady, she's an English lady, I can't remember her name right now, but she posts different things about like map changes and my kind of end of it. She's called Reality Sliders Mandela Effect.
Cool.
Anyways, she sees a different world map, like while I'm seeing a totally different world map. And just a short time ago, she saw the ice cap again. The northern polar ice cap was back. So even though we're like communicating with each other, we're not always in the same place. So one of the weirdest things is how can we talk transdimensionally when we're in different places? And this same phenomena could account for when we get maps from different worlds and when we get commercials from different worlds and we get things that like don't make any sense, and those things are kind of rare. Like it's not always very obvious, but sometimes you will see a commercial or something that's from a different reality. And I
Mm.
was just talking about earlier, like the Spider-Man movie. First, it was Spider-Man, the multiverse, and then it was Spider-Man into the multiverse, and then it was Spider-Man the Spider-Verse, and now it's Spider-Man into the Spider-Verse. So it's changed 4 times for me. And I'm like, I've seen all these commercials for this movie, and it's the exact same movie, and they haven't changed the title.
Wow. Wow. And those are part of it. There's a lot more slight and weird changes, and I also noticed a new round of people, a new set of people coming into ME. That's one, but I'm also noticing a new set of, like, what you're talking about, people noticing different changes in movies, and they're very, very, very small and very subtle, like you're talking about too. So I don't know. I just I know everybody's talking about your volume. I just moved up your volume. And now it's pretty much equal to my volume. And I'm hoping that sounds okay. And the problem is, depending on what kind of mic people have and the situation, I have to move it per that. It doesn't self-modulate anymore. I actually have to use this little digital mixing board thing. So it's there's a whole lot going on in the background here that I used to not have to worry about before. So I also noticed too, and I don't know if this is something that is going to be growing, but I don't want to say anything specifically, but I'm noticing a lot of people that are into cutting edge technologies, in terms of technologies that have to deal with new kinds of monetization or new kinds of money. They are very much into, kind of, let's call it, the occult sciences, and it's an odd mix, and I haven't quite made the connection between the two yet, but I know that it's there. That's all I'm going to say for now. But a lot of weirdness going on, and you know what? Suddenly, I have a headache now.
Oh boy.
Yeah, right.
You
Very
don't have
strange.
any ear ringing, do you?
No
Or is it
earring,
just okay?
but I do
But
have a.
I did forget to mention though, just before I forget, is like when you mentioned the Schumann resonance being affected or being changed or being, kind of in a bad way influenced by these outer technologies. We've been getting Schumann resonance readings where it's just like a block, like a straight up and down rectangle of Schumann blast. And it's supposed to be when the Schumann resonance peaks that it has like a gradient upwards, peaks, and has a gradient downwards. That's a natural waveform. But what we've been having is unnatural waveforms where it starts at full volume and ends abruptly at full volume. And there's no gradient whatsoever.
And that almost sounds exactly like them turning on a machine, something really big, and then turning it off, just as soon as they turned it on. And that's what Call 40 was talking about. All of these different kind of technologies. And as he was talking about that, this article was around, and it all, as sometimes as it does, it all came together nicely. And this article really is, it's startling. It's startling. And look at this, guys. Does this look familiar? You've got the torus wave from, guess what? And it says here, emission or wave propagation of electrical signal to make communication to identify any object emitting frequency. Human body emit very low electronic signal as temperature beat, brainwave delta, theta, alpha, beta, gamma. Bioelectromagnetic field, which is unique for every human body. This electromagnetic signal frequency idea of each object. Radar electronic signal detect the object, meaning the human body. They have that in parens for modulation of human brain waves. And then they have the bioelectromagnetic sphere there, which is basically the torus sphere. And they talk about what range of hertz is that you turn up whenever you want to affect the particular object, aka the human body. So not only can they move in on that particular the object, I bet there's a specific signature that each human being has in terms of electromagnetic frequency that they haven't talked about yet, and you can tweak those individual kind of characteristics of each human being. So though that would lend itself to someone who hasn't been far down into the research as us, they would immediately say, okay, well, then the Mandela effect is just a psyop. No, that's a very shallow interpretation. That's a very uneducated interpretation of exactly what all of this means. What this means is, particularly with the torus shape, and if you actually go back to, this document, and I'm trying to find it because I have so many documents here. If you actually go back to the gateway process document, it will actually, here, it's this one. If you actually go back to the gateway document, it says specifically that if you were able to change the consciousness itself, you're able to change the reality around you. And the more important part, Chick, is that the dislocation of the person from the reality around them. Now, is that something that is out of the control of the human being and they're allowed to be dislocated outside of the reality around them? And if that's the case, Chick, if that's the case, then what does that mean exactly?
I think that I, I'm not sure about the dislocation because I feel that we are dislocated from where we were or where we're supposed to be. But I do feel like looking at the gateway process documents, they said that the observable reality from the Orion reality is also a torus in shape. So it makes sense that the human being is a torus within a torus, and perhaps within the heart there's like another torus. If you're able to figure out the structure of the holographic reality, then you can get in there and try and tweak and change things that are going on. Again, I think that we are immune because I think that our curiosity and our, personalities and everything have persevered through everything. And the way people act in Orion, it might just be an Orion thing. They might just be socially different, or they might be dealing so much with the frequencies they're getting bombarded with. They don't have a whole lot of extra energy for extra things. Kind of like if you have a bad cold and your immune system is just so busy with that, you don't have any extra energy to be doing other things. Now, I could be completely wrong, but I don't think that we're affected in the same way. And I think that's one of the reasons why we are so open perception wise to being able to see and perceive all kinds of things that the general population don't seem to be able to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know, you're right. It must be some kind of strange frequency. Like there's something about us. And I think it has to do that we're not native to this reality. And that goes back to something you've said often, that we're not native to this reality. Regardless of where we started out originally, we are not where we started out from. And that's, yeah. And Buster just add, do you remember? I remember Jaden Goodall specifically. She died 3-4 years ago. She's alive. Do you remember her dying, Chick?
I don't specifically remember her dying,
Okay.
unfortunately. So that one's that I can't weigh in on it, but I do well believe it because there's so many people I've seen recently that have been dying and not dying, and it's been kind of a madhouse on that.
Yeah, that one's a madhouse, and also too, someone brought up JFK, and we all know that JFK now, the whole JFK thing with the second shooter inside the Warren report now. That's kind of interesting. I thought that's worthy of mention. But now that we get into the second half of the show, one of speaking of molding perception, I wanted to get into something that is more personal to me, but it was something we were talking about, is this sudden push of articles that I've noted. Well, actually, it's twofold. First, the mainstream media. Do you remember a few? weeks or months ago, they were hot and heavy on this UFO thing, right? I mean, you couldn't
Yes.
go right. Okay, it was everywhere, and they were
Mhm.
going nuts, right? Even I was contacted. I mean, everybody was talking about it, and the media generally was positive about it in terms of their coverage of it. All of a sudden, the media, those senators, they had this meeting. I don't know what happened, and suddenly no one is talking about UFOs anymore. And not only are they not talking about UFOs anymore, now more or less these other papers that, I mean, they're, like the Washington Examiner has this for their headline. Also, you have this for the headline. Not only should we ignore aliens, that the risk is too great to make contact to aliens, that the guy who is heading up to the stars, the Blink 182, Tom DeLonge, don't listen to him. He's failing to persuade people. They're also saying the hero to a lot of tech people out there, Elon Musk, is saying that aliens do not exist and that indeed SpaceX has better technology than Area 51, which, if you know how the government works, which I'm learning, that private contractors have better technology than the government itself. So to me, that's not a shock. And for him to say that aliens do not exist obviously puts him in contrast with a lot of other big names like Bigelow and some of the other big alien people out there. They're not alien people, people who are into UFOs and things like that. Obviously, I understand I'm not trying to conflate alien life, and that's another thing that they're doing here with UFOs. The concentration here is a tweaking of wordings from aliens to UFOs. But isn't it interesting how perception is being molded here? Is the broader point I'm making here is that it sort of dies down, and then you take papers like this that aren't the New York Times. The Express is still a big mainstream paper, but it doesn't have the same impact as the Times or something like that. And suddenly it's, bombs away in terms of let's just completely tear down what everyone else was talking about 2 or 3 short months ago. I think this is a real interesting case study in how it can move and confuse the broader perception of what is real and what isn't, because what this is showing and what this is doing is first saying one side is able to pull up their set of facts and say, look at the New York Times or whatever. Hey, UFOs are real. You're going to have to get used to it. Then months later, you can have the alternative side pull up another paper and say, no, aliens aren't real. And, we have better technology than aliens or whatever it may be, And to me, this is an interesting study in the confusion of how you confuse a population.
Absolutely. Like he's been a spokes guy before of, oh, don't listen to that, don't look at that. I'm Elon Musk, I'll tell you what to think. And I
Mm-hmm.
really don't like when people, because it's such a, I don't want to use the word mind control because that's very triggering, but it's such a controlling thing to try and gaslight people into, don't believe your own senses, believe me and what I'm saying to you.
Mm-hmm.
And he's totally doing that again. You guys remember when that big spaceship was over LA with the big, huge blue tail on it, and everyone was freaking out, and everyone was waking up, and everyone was going wild. And next thing, Elon Musk is like, "Oh yeah, that was me, SpaceX. We're awesome." And of course, then the footage shows up of like, "Oh, we did this space launch." I didn't see that footage anywhere before it happened. I don't know if that was a timeline manipulation, if it was there and I didn't see it, and they knew that this was going to happen, so they were going to take credit for the event. I'm not sure what happened, but everyone went right back to sleep then. As soon as they heard from Elon Musk, they didn't need to hear anymore. And I think that Musk, whether he's being directed by someone or he's just directing himself, has said, no, no, don't even think about the aliens. Like, we know the congressmen are talking about it, but it's not happening. Like, don't listen. It's fine.
Right, right. And do you remember all the craziness building up to all this? All the craziness building up even to ME. Whenever we had I think it was the Norwegian space spiral. We still have no information about that. We've shown on this channel, and we've shown, on Twitter and everywhere else. What about when CERN fires something up? and you see the bizarre spirals, or you'll just see rain just over what is, the Alice and then the Atlas circle. I mean, it's so bizarre. There's so much out there, and it's suddenly, yeah, who has that kind of bravado to be able to just go out there and say, hey, simply because I'm me, you should listen to what I say, and what I say is the way it goes. You want to talk about, you know, manipulation of perception. That's a massive manipulation of perception, and that is so powerful to be able to do that.
It really is. And I think that it's a very, negative thing. I know that there's some people that are not ready to wake up and see that there's, all kinds of things going on that they've never even considered previously. But this whole thing of not just letting people bury their heads in the sand, but comforting them into putting their heads back in the sand when something crazy is going on is not a nice or genuine thing to do. Like there's something that he's obscuring, or that he knows, or that he's being paid to say, or that he of his own volition is saying. Like, I'm not saying that I know why he's doing it, but I can see what he's doing. And I think that it's basically a horrible thing to do. I think anytime you say to someone, don't believe your own senses, believe me, you're trying to manipulate everybody, and you're trying to do it for, reasons that, I mean, they always say, oh, we don't want people to panic, etc., etc. But people aren't just going to panic. Presumably, people are going to wait for information, or at least be better equipped to deal with whatever situation comes on. It's like if you don't tell people anything, and all of a sudden a situation that's out of control is thrust in their face, most people will panic at that point.
Yeah, totally.
Slow introduction is what this populace has been trained over and over and over to, deal with. They call it conditioning for a reason, is they slowly let you know about something, and then by the time it happens, you're comfortable. But they're not even doing that anymore. They're just giving mixed signals of like, oh, this is happening. Oh, no, it's not happening. Oh, this is happening. Oh, it's not happening. I'm just like, the general population don't have the same backbone as the effectees. And I'm willing to go out and say that, because the effectees were dumped into, this is what's going on all of a sudden. And we were strong enough to deal with it. The average person is not. They'll just freak out if you don't give them some kind of, you know, like a leader to look to, where it's like, oh, this person has the answers. I'll just follow them because I don't want to think for myself. And
You know,
maybe that's what they're setting up Elon to be. It's like, oh, he's got all the answers. Everyone listen to him.
that's something interesting you said, because just today I was listening to one of my favorite YouTubers. His name is Thomas Sheridan, and he's a guy who's into the occult and into magic and things like that. And he was talking about the way the brain works and the way the mind works. And a lot of people who are, they'll wake up one day to the conspiracy world. And he was talking about the way the brain stem works and the way your synapses fire off and things like this. And he was talking about you get this euphoric feeling because finally the world starts making sense to you. But the problem is it becomes like this overloaded system if you're not eased into it. If you're suddenly thrown into it, you just go overboard and you end up alienating everyone around you. And it's sort of like if you suddenly find a new religion all of a sudden. Rather than having it all your life or being eased into a particular belief system, it's suddenly thrust upon you. You tend to kind of freak out. And he was saying the mind itself doesn't tune well to new ideas when they're introduced to you abruptly. And I thought, after what you just said, that works perfectly to what we're talking about here. And if you're an ME, the world's been wonky for a very long time. So it's been, you take it kind of in stride whenever people are saying, oh, UFOs are here. Oh, aliens exist. Oh, EMF waves and the government's doing these things. And, eventually you're going to take these kinds of things in stride, if only because you're a human being and you can adjust to those kinds of things. And it's so interesting because I like that guy's channel because he was talking about his point of view is about like particularly people who get into like the truther side of the conspiracy world, that they're suddenly just really hardcore and they proselytize, and they push away their family. And he was giving this kind of example of this guy he knew that became a different person after a while because of that. And it made me think about what you were talking about in terms of, it is pretty remarkable if human beings, they're willing, if you boil the water slowly, almost like, I forgot what institute that people always accuse of doing that in terms of our cultural norms, that they're changing them slowly over time. And if you do that slowly over time, a lot of people are more amenable to that happening versus you just doing it abruptly. And it's very like it's universally true. And a lot of people come to those conclusions if you start observing the people around you. And I think if you're an ME, suddenly what you inadvertently become is an observer of people and the way in which they react. And people in Orion, particularly locals, people who are from this area, they are much colder and they are more frigid to those ideas because of the coldness. And those ideas suddenly become a oh wow, something about, oh really, had a problem, oh wow, interesting. So anyway, it's just so strange. It's so strange. Take it away, chick.
Well, I think that, if Elon ever listens to these broadcasts, he's not going to like me very much, but I don't really care because, in all honesty, he didn't even exist where I was from until 2016. I never saw or heard any mention of him anywhere. And then all of a sudden, he was the hugest thing in the world. I know he's not the most interesting character. There's way more things going on in the Mandela Effect that are way more important and way more interesting. But I think that it's like gatekeeping people from waking up and seeing that there's things going on outside of their living room and outside of their house and their circle of friends, because that's like the extent of the world to so many people. And
Yeah.
it's just like, it's not reasonable or sane for that to be your entire horizons. That's the furthest you can look. It just, yeah, that's not what's going on. You're in a much bigger field of existence than that. And while that's like, oh, burdensome responsibility, it's like you have to look around at where you actually are so that you can actually use your life to actually do something important or to do something that's sensible. You need to understand your surroundings so you can keep your family safe.
Yeah.
That's, 101 there. Like we talked about so many times on this stream, is like, if you're a caveman, you keep a watch out for predators so you don't all get eaten. But in Orion, nobody has that instinct. They're just like, oh no, that stresses me. I don't want to know. And we're just like, what are you talking about? Like, you need to know what's going on because you're here. You're here in the world. And I suppose their answer to us is, no, you're not. You're from a world that was made of matter, that was comprised of matter and very slow to change. The gradient of change was millions of years, especially geologically. I mean, evolutionary wise, or however you want to approach that, because some people don't believe in evolution, but in many facets, things are very slow in the Sagittarius arm or the third dimension or whatever you want to call life before. But life here, yes, okay, we are on a learning curve because this existence is made of light, and light is far easier to bend and manipulate. And we're at a much lower density. So there's a much thinner veil between what you think and what you perceive and what your dreams are and what your reality is. Things kind of spill and blend over into each other. Timelines where different people are alive and dead kind of cross over and blend into each other. So I think, honestly, like a lot of the pushback that we're getting from the people that live here is because perhaps the way we think is not in line with the actual reality here. Like we're trying to wake them up. They're also trying to wake us up and say, like, the way that you approach problems is not on a quantum level. You're still thinking in a linear pattern, and you can't help that because you're from that. But we need to not, I feel, be flippant. We don't need to be like kind of just taking everything in stride as easily as they are. But I do think we do need to adjust to what the confines of reality are here because we're like this exception. It's obviously it's not genetic because like I said before, we're not related to each other. We're all kinds of everybody in the Mandela affected community. But either the technology that they have to mess with reality or to change reality or to change perception of reality, it may be locked onto a frequency that we don't emit. And if
Mhm.
you have a technology that's locked onto a particular frequency, and all of a sudden you have this whole bunch of humans that don't even resonate in that frequency, then you have a whole bunch of the general population that are not able to reach their full potential. They're not able to, you were just talking about the spine and the synapses. And, basically, like, as far as I'm seeing it these days, the spine is the Jacob's ladder. You're going up and up and up in your fields of perception and consciousness. And these technologies seem to be trying to keep the population at mass down, and it's not working on us. So we're seeing more and we're figuring out more and more what the real story is. And we're not falling for Elon Musk, and we're not falling for, the safeguards of gatekeepers. If you do get past the health problems, if you do get past the electromagnetic frequency bombardments and the bad food and the bad water and all these problems that are dumped on people, we're like, we're totally exempt from all of that. And I think they have no idea what to do with us. So we just find ourselves kind of alienated in this reality because we are in the way of whatever the master plan is. Maybe the master plan is to keep the light dimension, like the fifth dimensional reality, from going to the sixth or seventh dimension. Maybe they can keep a hold on things if things don't get too complicated. But just by us being here, we're probably messing up that whole plan, and that's why we're so unwelcome.
Yeah, and I noticed that's while you're talking, I was seeing the chat, and one of the things that's been hitting me today, and I've noticed since that block spike, is I have these bouts where I just fall asleep. I don't mean like I'm standing in line and fall asleep, but like if I'm sitting on the couch or in a chair or something, I'll suddenly come to and my mouth will be dry because it was gaped wide open, and I'll have like this weird elaborate dream. And I'll look at I'll look at my phone and see I've only been asleep like 5 minutes, but it feels like 3 hours or something. And another thing I've been noticing too, whenever I get up in the morning, I'm so sore. My whole body is sore, and I don't understand. I don't understand why. It's so strange, and I
Oh
know
my gosh, me too. I feel like
really.
I'm 100 years old when I wake up in the morning. I just go, oh
Ah,
my gosh, my joints, my back. Like,
yep.
I don't even want to be awake today. Like, it hurts that much. Are you feeling the same thing? Like stiffness in your bones, your muscles, everything is just
Oh,
horrendously painful, and your mood is just so bad. And
oh my God! Exactly. Absolutely, absolutely. My I get my eyeballs are so dry. I started to drink Pedialyte because of the electrolytes, and I read that millennials drink it for hangovers because they're so stripped from drinking. So of all of their electrolytes and minerals and zinc and all that. So I started to drink Pedialyte. So I take 2 huge gulps of Pedialyte before I go to bed. And then in the middle of the night, if I get up or whatever, I wake up. I have a huge thing of water that has electrolytes in it, and I'll drink that, and that helps a little bit with. I used to have dry eyes that would be so dry, and my mouth would be so dry that I couldn't open them, so I'd have to hold them closed until I've wandered over to the fridge, or if I had now I put water, but till I drank and drank and drank, and I just could not hydrate. So now I do the Pedialyte, and then I do the water constantly. I've started eating tons and tons and tons of yogurt as well to try to regulate just the electrolytes, the amount of zinc my body can absorb. And it's helped. Linda, Linda, it does help. I take 2 huge gulps of it. Um, I heard of emergency for the electrolytes prelim, but I also, for me now that I've found Pedialyte, and it doesn't taste bad because sometimes these kinds of things that are, they're good for you and they taste god awful, and this is not that bad. yeah, we're drying out in pain because microwaves dehydrate you, and we're stuck in an EMF soup. Yeah, Master Roth, absolutely. So, staying hydrated is absolutely now at this point utterly and totally critical. So keep hydrated, big time. That's the only thing I can say. And B12, you've got to pump the B12 because that's part of the sleepiness. Is the if you go to a nutritionist and if you get a real intense panel done, they'll tell you. I know for me, my vitamin D was in the negative, and so I take a kind of just a plethora of different supplements in the morning, including Jingle On. I take B12. I do vitamin D. I do oh shoot, I do astragalus. I take all kinds of things. So it's I don't know, you know.
I think that that was so interesting. What you just said there about vitamin D. I was going to say something that was absolutely crazy and gas and everything else is when I was living in the desert, everyone that I knew that was living there that was getting blasted by the sun, they were all deficient in vitamin D from
Mm-hmm.
when they had their blood panels done. And it was like, okay, if you're in a cold, dark country, it's easy to be deficient in vitamin D. But when you are tanned and blasted with way too much sunlight all the time and you're deficient in vitamin D, what does that tell you? I think, like, for me, that was such proof that there's something incredibly intense going on with the sun where we're all going to be vitamin, like, or vitamin D at least deficient or sunlight deficient unless we can find a way to replace that kind of light. And for me personally, I've felt sunlight deficient ever since 2016. Like I literally feel it in my body that I've been like in a dark box for like 3 years, even though the sun is blasting all the time. It doesn't. I feel like I'm, living in some really dark, cold country way up north.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
feel like I haven't gotten any sun in a long time, and a lot of MEs have talked to me and said the same thing. Is like we can't absorb it, and it seems to be the general population even are having problems of, absorbing the sun. Which for 3 years, yeah, you can get away with, but for how many years in the future before that becomes a problem? Unless our skin changes all of a sudden, which can very much happen because our lungs changed, and now we have like 5 lungs. They're like flaps,
Mm-hmm.
so it still kind of looks like 2 lungs, but we have like 3 lungs on the right side and 2 on the left because the heart is taking up a lot of. Even though it's center, it's like center left right now, so it's taking up a lot of space.
No, no doubt. And that's the thing about this white sun. We miss the yellow sun. Exactly, Buster. We're missing the we need a regular yellow sun that knows how, and our all of our skin is used to regardless, it's used to absorbing it, and we don't have it anymore as human beings, as a species. We're missing something that is critical to us, and it's that normal sun. It's this, you can look at it, man. It looks like just a big light bulb. I swear. It's like at the dark, what they do is whenever it's on the other side of the planet, or if, whatever, I don't even care. If it's on the other side of the ball, they unscrew it or something and they put a new one in or something. That's the way I feel about it. And then whenever it's over you again, it doesn't even look like a sun. It's just a light. It's just a really bright white light, and it's just awful. And I don't know, it's almost as if the plants got the uploads, and a lot of people who are very much into health and all of these other things, why do you think, lately so many people are changing their diets and they're searching for something, and people that are in shape, they're constantly changing their diet. I think part of it is this: they just don't know that it's this, that it's the reason why you're in shape, you look in shape, you live the lifestyle of someone who is that takes care of their body, and yet you wake up like we do feeling you're 90 years old, your back is killing you, your arms and shoulders and legs are for some reason are killing you, and you have no idea why. And then you have to do all these really weird things that you didn't have to do before. And I'm not talking about because I'm getting old. I'm talking about 2 or 3 years ago, like you're talking about. We're not talking about a decade or 15 years ago. Man, I'm talking about abrupt. So I don't know. And prelim, these folks since 1996, I believe it. I don't think that there was a definite time. I think there's different timelines, and I think we've come in at different times. I just think that the broad bulk of us came in around 2016. And I think outliers like Prelim and Chick, who have either gone back and forth or came in at different times, um, they have more wisdom and they understand it better. But nonetheless, I think a lot of us came in around 2016, and we're all now just starting to really feel it and understand what's going on. So I don't know. Try order B17, guys. We have an illegal vitamin. Well, I know one of those is I think it's one of the B's. Um, it is actually dangerous, and it's like a vitamin that turns into one of the B vitamins. It actually turns into cyanide if you put and it's not cyanide as in the vitamin, but if you put it in your body, it does that, and it can like hurt you very badly, and I think kill you. So be careful with that. I'm by no means am I I'm just telling you what I take really mainstream stuff. I mean, I'm just telling you really mainstream things. I'm not trying to send you down some rabbit hole of something really dangerous. I'm talking about stuff you can get at Walgreens.
And I hear that too. I was just like, I see a whole bunch of people here like agreeing with us, like they haven't been feeling the best since they moved to timelines with the white sun. And yeah, I've heard people say 1996, I've heard people say 2000 and 2001 and
Mm-hmm.
2008. And like there's some years where there seem to be bulks of people that came over. I have no idea how they do it, because in all honesty, I don't know how they're not feeling a little bit under the weather. Well, not like under the weather. It's not like you're going to get a cold, but you just feel a little bit like your immune system feels that you're just a little bit down. And I
Mm-hmm.
used to feel that way in Ireland in the winter because it was so far north that we would have daylight for most of the day in the summer. Like the sun would go down at 10 o'clock at night, but in the winter you would only get a couple of hours sunlight a day. Like it would be dark, you would go into school, and then by the time you're getting out of school at 3 o'clock, it would be dark again. So that's the way you would feel in the winter, is like so sun deprived because you're getting there's like 4 hours of daylight and you have to be inside for all of those hours, so you miss it like so much of winter. But it's like that even though standing in the sun so much of the time. And I just wanted to describe for anybody that remembers or misses it or anything. Like for me, I was trying to think of how I would describe the light from the yellow sun. And one of the closest things I can think of is like if you have like a hard boiled egg, like the yellow in the middle, the yolk, it was like if you could imagine that color, but as light. It's
Mm-hmm.
like kind of a yellow that I don't really even see in this dimension, but there's this like warm, cheerful yellow, but kind of softer than like not white soft, but like a little bit softer than the yolk of an egg. But it was that kind of yellow, and it was that way all the time. Because some people are saying, oh, it gets yellow in the evening, and I'm like, no, it gets like this weird yellow orange in the evening that's very glaring. It looks like an LED light, but it's not the same quality of light. It's not the same frequency of light at all as the old one was, even when the sun does look, which is strange too. Like the sun is white during the day and then suddenly yellow and orange and goes down like within half an hour in the evening.
Yeah.
Like the sun sets so quickly here too. Very strange stuff.
Yeah, and that's just it. That's the closest thing you're going to get is when it's setting, or I'm on the East Coast, so I can see the sun rising, and the sun rising. I get up at 4 in the morning, and I can see the ocean, so I can see it coming up, and it's so beautiful for maybe the first, I'd say hour and a half, but by 7 a.m., 7:30, depending on the time of year it is, for this time of year by 7 a.m., it's already you can see it switching to this thing. I don't know what it is, but it's the closest thing. Is you've got to get up really early, and you only get about an hour of it. That it reminds you of the old Earth, and then it becomes just this I don't know what, and then it's downhill from there till finally it's midday. It's over your head, and it's just and it's just yeah, it's just I don't know. It's just depressing. And then yeah, you end up popping a vitamin D pill, and you go to the doctor, and they're still telling you you're deficient. So, um, certainly you got to be careful with anything that you take. And I certainly would say, get guidance from your doctor, certainly. But I take, I take different kinds of supplements because, I need it. I certainly need it. That's for sure.
I think the body is changing to be able to process these things, though. I think that that's one of the reasons that we're in so much pain right now,
Mm.
because this, it's not just that consciously we're trying to survive and, that we're going forward, but I feel like all kinds of things are on our side within ourselves. I feel like the body is trying to influence the changes that can help us survive in the atmosphere and the reality that we're in. And hopefully, these weird changes that we're seeing to the intestines and to everything else is going to help us to be able to kind of absorb this kind of white magnetic light instead of the more yellow, like electrical light, like to try and almost like switch the polarity on a battery and be able to get a charge off of that and be able to run off of that. But I feel like it's a very painful process. Some people
Mm.
have described it almost like a butterfly, like when a caterpillar goes into a cocoon, and how painful, we never think of that experience as painful. But actually, yes, that's a lot of us are going through incredible discomfort right now because your system is trying to change into something else entirely so that you can continue. And we've already had all kinds of weird things, like I mentioned, the lungs and the heart and the mesentery, and just all of these strange things, the kind of sac of fluid that's around the heart. I see the changes trying to happen. I just hope that we can, get the correct combination so that we don't feel deficient, so that we can actually thrive in this environment. Because I don't actually see a gateway back right now.
Oh no. Oh no. I don't think we're going back. There's no doubt. Wherever we're at, we're not going back. One thing I'm happy about is this channel has, in this crew, we do have a medical doctor that still remains anonymous, but and I'm able to bounce ideas off of this medical doctor, and I'm really we've had him on the channel before, and I'm setting up something to talk to him again soon, so I'm pretty excited about that. So if anybody wants to talk about specific things, just drop me a line and let me know over on Twitter about specific things, the questions, if you want to be, if you want them asked out there in the chat. If it's something that you've wondered about, I certainly, like, I didn't know Botox was originally designed for migraines, and or it not originally, but it was, or it can be. It can help migraines. I didn't know that, and I sent a tweet out today about that, and he responded to me saying, no, that's always been the case. So it's kind of nice having a medical doctor, helping us out and understanding what is, at least from his version of reality. And for someone that is Mandela affected himself, it's nice having different people in different trades and different professions helping us out, so we can better understand what is and isn't happening. So we're at the hour now. I think we did pretty good. Can we get some thumbs up out there, please? Um, you guys are great. There's always super chats, just so everyone remembers. Everything with super chats and whatever we get, we're going to start building and putting it towards a web page. We also now have Patreon. It's underway. We have 17 patrons. Thank you to Patreon. We have a $2, $5, and $10. All those monies will go to a web page that we're going to build, and not just some basic web page that you can get some kind of, like, I don't want to just, it's going to be in a really cool web page. It's going to have different and unique things to it, and the information that we're putting on the Patreon page is not available anywhere else. And it's a deep dive in a lot of different kind of government documents and FOIA requests. If you're interested in that kind of deep dive kind of situation. And one of the reasons why we did that was we knew that people from other channels were using that information themselves, so at least we have to make them pay for it once. And another thing too, we can talk more freely about those deep dives that we kind of keep away from the channel here. So, well, thank you, Call for Zero. That Patreon is cool. Thank you. It is geared towards a more hardcore understanding of the documents from all of the DoD departments, Department of Defense departments, also the clandestine world, CIA, MI5. It just goes on and on and on. So, everyone, thank you so much. Those thumbs up is very much appreciated. And any final words, Chick, for this week?
Yeah, there was like two things that were just on my mind, and one of them was if you Google church mural UFO, you're gonna
Mm.
see some SpaceX launches, quote unquote, for you, Elon, from medieval times. So he might try and take, credit for that too, but I highly doubt that's what's going on. They look exactly like the launch, and I sent on Twitter. You can see the picture I sent to you, SMQ.
Okay.
Uh, you'll see exactly what I mean. So if you guys Google that, you'll probably get a chuckle at just how ridiculous this whole situation is with the
What?
gatekeeping of Elon Musk. Yeah, you see that? What do you
Uh,
think of that?
Wait, whoa, whoa! Is that him? Is he saying that that's it, or what?
No, no, this is like the exact shape of, even though the one over LA was blue, there are all kinds of pictures of church murals of what they're trying to say was the SpaceX launch over
Oh
LA. In
man.
medieval art, in churches, they have pictures of these things with human beings inside of them.
Oh man, you've got to send that. You should tweet that out. That's an awesome. Well, she sent it over in message to a direct message. This is a cool picture, actually.
Are
That
you
would.
able to screen share on the chat just before we finish? Because
Uh,
like that
Let me see if I
might be
can.
too complicated,
No,
but
no, no. It's okay. Let me see if I can do a show you guys. This is a very, very, very cool picture,
let's
and
troll Elon a little bit more just before we sign off.
let me try to do it this way. Let's see. And shift. Boom. Back. Boom. It's like you got to reprogram everything. Ah, I tried. It's just sorry that page doesn't exist. Ah, that would have been so cool. I want to share. Here, let me try this again. Hold on, folks. This is so cool. Um, Let me see here. It's really, really, it's, it's a, uh, it's a Twitter message, and I don't know if I can, and I can't.
Oh, the Twitter. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's a message. Because it's a message.
I was gonna
Yeah,
say if you could save the picture, maybe you could bring it up really quick.
yeah, that's a good idea. Let me try to save the picture because this is definitely, this is definitely, definitely worth it. Let's see here. Save that. All right. So they have this thing called image here, where I can take an image. Image two. Sorry, folks. I just want to do this real quick because this thing is so cool looking and so weird looking. It's just weird. Shoot. Give me 1 second, folks. Where did I download this to? Where did I download this to? Desktop, it says? Okay. Oh, I see. Okay. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Quick. Oh, I gotta scroll down. Oh, it's not showing it, guys. So what I'll do is I'll send it out. I can't seem to find it. It doesn't seem to want to pick it up. And I have all formats. It's just not showing it. Shoot. It's a really cool picture, too. And I don't know why it's not showing it. Let me see if I can pull it up in as a picture. Oh, because it's showing as a JPEG small. Let me change it to JPEG real quick here. Let's see. See if it actually lets me change it to a regular JPEG. Are you sure you want to change it? Yes. Oh, it changed it. Yes. Awesome.
Oh,
Okay.
it's so cool.
All right, cool. So Folks, thank you for sticking with us here. JPEG, desktop, boom. You're going to love this.
It's gas.
Okay, there it is. Does everybody see it? Boom. I see it on my screen. Do you guys see it? Boom. Do you see it, guys? Do you see it, Chick?
I'm currently sending you a picture of the California SpaceX, probably a JPEG as well, so that they can compare and contrast, and you can see exactly what I'm talking about. This is the medieval one. It's up on screen, and I just sent in the Twitter what Elon Musk is saying that he did,
Okay, cool.
and you can see it's the same thing.
Okay,
It's the
okay.
same shape. It's the same
Oh,
everything. So
oh,
for him to
wow.
say, "Oh, our technology was SpaceX," I'm like, "Boy, first of all, you didn't exist. You show up out of nowhere rudely. You're telling us what to think, and you're blatantly bluffing so hard."
Okay, so I'm going to try to save this one too, and we'll make the comparison. And we're going to do this live here because we're over the hour. So if anybody wants to stick around, that's awesome. If not, we totally understand. But this is stuff doing technology on the fly. All right, so
Absolutely on the fly.
totally on the fly. Let me see if I can find it here. Shoot. Oh, there it is. JPEG small. Show in folder. Oh, there it is. All right, cool. I'll be able to change it, and then we'll be able to contrast the two different bits of 2J. Yes, I want to change it, please. Okay, cool. No, I just have to find. Oh, there it is. All right. So, go ahead and add that. You're not going to be disappointed, everyone. Okay. Yes. Okay. Boom. There you go. Does everybody see? Are you able to see the two, Chick?
Uh, yes, now I see it.
Yep. There it is. Boom.
There's the second one. So you have this crazy skyfish that was chasing a star. The star got away and went up into the sky, and everyone ignored it. And Elon Musk, you see the pod in the middle of this weird looking fish looking thing? There's something in there, and it matches up with the medieval art. This is obviously something that's been going on forever. And Elon Musk is like, "Oh no, I made it. It's my technology." I'm like, not unless you were painting medieval churches, my friend.
You know, you've got something here. Man, you've really got something here. That is, I don't know if anyone's ever, I don't know if anyone has ever made a comparison like this. That's, wow, that is really something else. That, look at that. That is nuts. It looks exactly like a person sitting inside of this thing, literally. And if you start thinking about like gel fields, and you start thinking about plasma and things like that, you know, that's not too far off, particularly if you're sending someone between different vibrational frequencies. You're not exactly talking about a launch from point A to point B in terms of geography. What you're really talking about is you're really talking about someone blinking in and out. And if you have to send someone up so that they get a certain amount of velocity in order for the vibrational frequency to become just right before that velocity is met, and then once it is, the sort of plasma field kicks in, and then boom, they're gone. Then you're onto something. That is very cool. That's really amazing.
One person, Michael E, is saying that on his channel he has like footage of it trying to break through the sky or like break through the dome.
Hmm.
Wow, that's wild. But like I was just like, this is to me glaringly obvious a liar liar pants on fire situation. And I don't care if he's a billionaire, and I don't care, what the situation is. Unless he's a time traveling billionaire, there's something totally else going on, and this is not SpaceX technology. That round pod that's in the middle of that skyfish is not a SpaceX rocket. It doesn't even look like a rocket. It's round.
Yeah, that almost looks like it's a plasma portal of some sort, or some sort of portal. One 5.21 gigawatts exactly, Jeffrey. It looks like sci-fi. And yet here we are. It's I remember this picture from that ancient mural. Well, they're all over the place, but this one is I think that one's from like Mary or something holding you know, baby Jesus or whatever. Isn't that where you got or isn't that where this one's? There's so many of them,
I
you
found
know.
three pictures, and two of them are in some format that wouldn't show up at all for me. So this is just one. So that's what I was saying to the people at home. If you want to just Google image search, you'll find loads of these. This isn't the only painting of this.
Mm,
Like UFO church mural, or medieval UFO launch. Any of those search terms on a Google image search will bring this up. It's not even hidden by Google.
mm-hmm.
Is literally like still there. It's just I suppose nobody is Googling those terms because that's a
Oh no.
pretty strange string of words to be looking for.
Right.
But
Right. No doubt.
in some of the pictures, they depict angels inside of these things with wings, and in some, like they do here, there's a man flying this thing, or this is part of the man, perhaps. I'm not really sure what this technology is, but it's certainly something that is very much real and existing here in Orion.
And if you look at the picture of the guy, he's wearing some sort of armor, maybe, and then he's sitting on something like a seat, and the seat itself is also part of the back part of the seat is part of the I get for lack of it's part of the flame, for lack of a better word. You see both arms, and it almost looks like armor of some sort. So I don't know. It's very interesting though. The
There's
comparison. It's shocking actually.
some strange things going on here. But I
Mm.
mean, I know this is totally irrelevant to like almost everybody, but it brings back something that I used to draw when I was like 5 or 6 years old. I had this thing that I would draw of like stars and like draw them in a cage, and I used to call it like star stealers. And that just came back to me when I saw this, and I was like, I wonder if there's something going on where energy like this is being kept within an energetic cage of some kind. And I was
Mm-hmm.
actually onto something when I was little that that is actually real here. It's not just an idea. There's
Mm-hmm.
something going on where people can actually be inside something that looks quite like a star, and they're trying to break out of the dome, like as Michael E said. I'd love if I had those drawings for proof, but I left home like a decade ago and I don't have any of my like old stuff. But if I ever get a hold of them, I'll post them.
Yeah, and the thing about it is with technology like this, I think we know, and what we've looked at so far is I think we're beyond physical craft like we think of a craft. You know, I think we're beyond that, and this would remind me of something that's closer to Gateway. In terms of if you were to take the concepts in Gateway, if you were to take the concepts of taking a torus shape and applying it to the EMF frequencies out there, or the electromagnetic bands that are out there, that this is what you would come up with if you were to take something that in the esoteric or the occult world where they talk about one of the hermetic principles is vibration. You talk about vibrational frequency. This is what you would come up with is technology like this. You wouldn't need very much of a physical craft. It would be something magnetic, something like that. So, all right, so we're way, way, way over time. So, but this was interesting at the end, and it was very important to see this, and yet a new perspective is born for me, at least on this. And I never thought to put the two together. This is pretty amazing, chick. So it's good stuff, man.
Awesomeness. I'll see if I can get any more about this because I've never seen anything written about this technology, but perhaps somewhere there's some like description from, a medieval church in Lithuania or something where maybe they have a name for this, or maybe they have even a snippet of what the technology, is based on. I think you're right. This probably is an occult frequency technology. Like this is obviously not made of metal
Mm-hmm.
parts, and it's obviously not a metal SpaceX ship.
Yeah.
This is a totally different kind of technology that's accessible here in Orion, perhaps because this reality is holographic and light based, that just like we were saying earlier, the kind of the inside and the outside, the veil is thinning between all of that.
Mm-hmm. No doubt, no doubt. All right, cool guys. Yeah, I do. I think that we could be looking at a wormhole, Azeroth. That's totally could be the case. And thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, everybody. Mike. I mean, there's just so many people in Sapia. Everybody, thank you so much for being here. The reader, Kyle, Sharkington, Naw, everybody. Obviously, Buster. Um, yeah, folks. So thank you so much, everybody, and we'll talk to you later.
We'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.